He was shoved aside and ridiculed at the first private space hotel for nothing more than wearing a bright red MAGA cap, his personal badge of pride. The arrogant administrator sneered and mocked, never imagining who stood before him. But when it came out that this nobody was actually the station's primary investor, the entire orbit shifted. Now the onlooking crowd waits, breath held, wondering how their wronged guest will respond. By the 5th decade of the 21st century, the world had gotten pretty comfortable with extraordinary luxuries, enough to whisk the super-rich off Earth and into low orbit just for a weekend getaway. The Stardust Aurora, the first ever privately owned space hotel, had just opened its docking ports to a parade of Earth's elite. Seriously, the place was swarming with celebrities trying to snap zero-G selfies, tech moguls flaunting their AI-driven suits, political bigwigs pretending they were just like us, and other fabulously wealthy travelers who viewed the cosmos as their personal after-party venue. Right in the middle of this interstellar VIP crowd, there stood a relatively short, middle-aged man wearing a bright red Make America Great Again cap. He didn't have a flashy entourage tailing him, nor was he wrapped in some insanely expensive designer getup. Nope, just a calm, steady presence, like a guy who'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by much these days. He adjusted his cap in a subtle, almost defiant way, as if to say, "Yes, I'm here, and I'm comfortable with who I am." In front of him loomed the hotel's administrator, Pierre, a lanky, self-assured young man who'd recently scored a promotion and apparently let it swell his ego to atmospheric proportions. He fancied himself the face of cosmic hospitality, which, judging by his expression, meant he was ready to judge anyone who didn't fit his idea of a 22nd century trendsetter. The moment Pierre's eyes locked onto the crimson MAGA hat, his suave smile sharpened into a smirk. You could practically see the internal alarm. "Conservative alert! Fossil from a bygone era spotted in zero gravity." Pierre cleared his throat and greeted the guest with faux sweetness that couldn't quite mask his disdain. "Well, sir," he began, letting the word sir drip with sarcasm like a leaky faucet. "Are you sure there's still room for such, shall we say, old-school earthlings up here?" He winked at a nearby couple, as if inviting them to join his private stand-up show. The crowd was starting to pay attention now. People craned their necks, micro-drones hovered closer to record the action, and a few chuckles rippled through the hall. This was new content, after all, and everybody loves a good social media clip starring an arrogant hotel admin and an unsuspecting guest. The tension stirred, a bubble waiting to pop, as the guest remained unusually calm under the spotlight. Instead of firing back, he just adjusted his cap again and locked eyes with Pierre, as if silently asking, "Is that the best you've got?" The other guests began whispering among themselves, curious and a tad eager for some drama. Some were excited, wondering if the MAGA hat guy would explode with righteous fury. Others looked slightly uncomfortable, sensing that Pierre's verbal jab had crossed a line. But nobody stepped in. It was like everyone wanted to see how this cosmic showdown would play out. And there it was, the first spark of conflict, floating in the artificially regulated oxygen, making even the sterile white corridors of the Stardust Aurora feel electrically charged. As Pierre smirked, confident he'd nailed the opening act of his private stage performance, the guest simply stood his ground, unruffled. The chapter would close on this tense moment, with the audience primed, the tension set, and the question lingering in the artificial gravity. Who exactly was messing with whom? Pierre, clearly feeling like he's on a cosmic comedy club stage, takes his jabs to the next level. With a theatrical hand flourish, he says, "Oh, pardon me, sir, but it seems your requests must have been lost on Mars some 40 years ago." He caps it off with a sarcastic little bow, eliciting scattered snickers from a few guests who aren't sure if they should applaud or roll their eyes. One of them slyly raises a holographic smartphone, eager to catch every second of this interplanetary smackdown. The man in the MAGA cap doesn't flinch. If anything, he looks even calmer, like a pilot floating through zero-G turbulence without spilling his coffee. He tilts his head and responds softly, "You know, young man, I came to space to discover new horizons, not to revive old prejudices." That subtle, razor-sharp retort is like a needle popping a balloon right in Pierre's face. The joke's over, and he knows it. His grin falters for a split second before he decides he's had enough. Who is this guy to stand up to him, the newly minted icon of orbital hospitality? Pierre snaps his fingers, calling over a security guard, a tall, brawny fellow whose IQ probably doesn't reach escape velocity. "Get this relic out of my registration zone," Pierre demands, his voice dripping with disdain. At that moment, the crowd gasps in perfect unison, like a choir of overpriced space tourists finally realizing the show just got serious. The guard clamps a big hand onto the guest's arm, and the tension in the air skyrockets. People react with a delicious mix of horror and delight. A few travelers are outraged. "This is unacceptable." Others stifle giggles, savoring the chaos. A couple of amateur journalists in the making scramble for better camera angles, eager to broadcast this fiasco across the galaxy of social media. The MAGA-hatted visitor remains strangely serene, as if being manhandled in low orbit is just another day at the office. It's almost comical. Here, in the pinnacle of human luxury and engineering, a grown man is being muscled out for daring to rock an old-school political statement. The clashing emotions and raised voices bounce off the pristine white walls, and the buzz spreads like wildfire through the corridors. By the time this incident is over, it seems half the hotel will know about it, and the other half will be watching the replay on their devices. As the guard's grip tightens, the chapter ends on a charged note, the crowd hovering between shock, scorn, and disbelief. Pierre flashing a smug grin of triumph, and the guest still calm, eerily calm, as if he's just waiting for the perfect moment to show everyone who's really out of their depth in this gravity-controlled playground. Just as the guard's knuckles begin to tighten on the guest's arm, the man in the MAGA hat casually slips a small black ID badge from his pocket. He holds it up, letting it catch the artificial overhead lighting. A shimmering holographic display flashes into view, proclaiming in no uncertain terms, "Primary Investor, Stardust Aurora Project." Instantly, there's a collective gasp. A few people who'd been snickering before now look like they've swallowed their tongues. Someone in the crowd, finally putting two and two together, blurts out, "Wait a minute! That's the guy who financed the whole station!" Suddenly, the narrative flips faster than a drone can pivot in zero gravity. The very man Pierre tried to humiliate and eject happens to be the reason this pricey orbital playground even exists. With a calm, almost amused tilt of his head, the guest lifts his cap slightly in greeting, meeting Pierre's horrified gaze. "My apologies," he says, his voice as smooth as vacuum-sealed chocolate. "But it appears we have a slight service issue. Consider this a quality check." Pierre's face turns paler than lunar dust. A hush falls over the crowd as every recording device swivels to capture the moment. Just minutes ago, Pierre was the self-appointed star, mocking and dismissing this old-fashioned earthling. Now he stands there looking like the universe's most clueless lackey. You can almost hear the algorithm spinning up as these clips start beaming across social networks. "Hotel admin versus owner. Whoops!" The security guard, who seconds ago was doing his best bouncer impression, abruptly lets go of the guest's arm, as if it's suddenly made of molten lava. He stumbles backward, mumbling something that might be an apology or a prayer, while the onlookers divide into two camps. Half of them gape in shock, still processing the whiplash. The other half exchange knowing nods, impressed by the guest's unshakable composure. Some even smirk, enjoying Pierre's instant comeuppance and the delightful irony of seeing a petty tyrant toppled. In the center of it all stands the investor, calm and collected, not a hair out of place beneath that infamous cap. His presence now weighs more heavily than any artificial gravity could. As he straightens his shirt, a faint grin plays at the corner of his lips. The scene has flipped from a cheap comedy roast to a dramatic grand reveal, and the crowd can't get enough of it. The chapter ends on that note, Pierre blinking in stunned silence, the guard retreating like a scolded puppy, and the guests trading astonished looks. Outside, stars sparkle in endless silence, while inside, a single revelation has changed everything. Pierre's fury and embarrassment fade into a desperate scramble for redemption. He stutters, voice cracking like cheap plastic under pressure. I didn't know. Please, I'm sorry. This is all a misunderstanding. But his apology rings hollow, drifting in the artificially controlled air with all the grace of space junk. Before Pierre can further dig himself into an interstellar crater, Mr. Hart, the man in the red MAGA cap, just gives a slow, disappointed shake of his head. A misunderstanding is when you forget your toothbrush, he says calmly, leaning in just enough for everyone to hear. This, however, is something else entirely. Meanwhile, the galaxy of social media is already going supernova with fresh videos. Orbital hotel admin insults owner. Oops. The crowd parts as a previously unseen figure steps forward. Hart's assistant, dressed in a sleek suit that practically screams, "No nonsense." With a crisp, businesslike tone, he announces, "Mr. Hart has instructed that your duties be suspended, Administrator. Await further administrative review." If Pierre was pale before, now he's practically transparent. Cameras whirl to capture every second of his unraveling. The once arrogant host, who mocked a guest he deemed an out-of-touch relic, now stands humbled and humiliated before the very man who made this whole shiny space resort possible. Disbelief settles into the crowd, followed by slow, appreciative applause. Some travelers clap politely, others cheer. Finally, some justice up here. While a few just smirk, thoroughly enjoying the cosmic irony of it all. Hart turns to Pierre with a gentle smile that's disarmingly kind. "You know," he says, straightening his jacket, "I came up here to relax and see if this place lived up to its reputation. Thanks for showing me the truth. I have no doubt that without folks like you, the service will become a lot more orbitally friendly." Pierre's authority crumbles before everyone's eyes. As news drones hum away, live streams beam this satisfying scene back to Earth. Down below, millions will watch, comment, and share, celebrating a moment of cosmic comeuppance that proves dignity can trump snobbery, even in zero gravity. Adjusting his hat with a nonchalant flick, Mr. Hart steps into a VIP elevator, its polished doors waiting to whisk him away to more pleasant corners of the station. Right before they slide shut, he tosses out a final sardonic remark. "Seems like there's room in space for everyone, especially those who know how to behave with a little dignity." The doors seal with a soft hiss. The crowd, still buzzing with excitement and approval, disperses, leaving Pierre alone with his battered pride. Somewhere, far off in the darkness of space, stars sparkle indifferently. Here inside this orbital haven, one thing is clear. The balance of power just took a graceful turn in favor of respect.